Did you know that the avatar cycle has been going on for over 10,000 years so far? This resulted in quite a few avatars, each with their unique stories, struggles, triumphs, and failures. But from all those avatars, we only have info about 12 of them. We have 2 avatars being born in the Fire Nation, 2 avatars being born in the Air Nomads, 3 born in the Water Tribes, 3 being born in the Earth Kingdom, and another special 2 that fall within their own category. And today, we'll explain everything we know about each of these 12 avatars. And brace yourselves because, let me guess, you thought there could only be 1 avatar per generation, right? Well, think again, because in 2 separate occasions, there was a time when 2 avatars coexisted at the same time. How is that possible? You'll find out in a little bit. Let's begin from the element of fire, that when it comes to fireborn avatars, we know by far the least info on. Let's start from an avatar most fans never have heard of before, Avatar Sito. You see, Avatar Sito was the Fire Nation avatar preceding Avatar Yang Chen. But who was Yang Chen? Well, we'll talk about her in a little bit. For those wondering, we did not only find out about Sito during the comics and light novels, because as a matter of fact, he actually appeared in the original series, Avatar The Last Airbender. Can't remember when? Well, let me refresh your memory then. You see, Sito first appeared to Aang in a spiritual vision directed by Avatar Roku, in which he was lava bending the magma from 4 volcanoes while in the avatar state. Aang also saw him again briefly in a similar vision during his final battle against Ozai, this time among a great number of avatars all standing in a line, upon regaining his ability to enter the avatar state. Okay, before we get into more detail, you need to hear this. What if I told you that you can actually earn gaming consoles and even $10,000 worth of Amazon gift cards with Raid Shadow Legends' new Spring Hunt minigame? Yeah, this is no joke, it's actually happening for the first time ever and for a limited time only by visiting the link www.springhunt.plarium.com. You can enter your raid ID and start searching for missing items. Once you complete the tasks, you can win anything from in-game loot all the way to real-life prizes like gaming consoles or Amazon gift cards worth up to $10,000. Raid Shadow Legends is not just a mobile game, as even PC gamers can play this as well. No matter the platform, the game is completely free of charge. And by visiting the link in the description below, or by scanning this QR code, you will get both this epic boss killer Taylor and Rector Drath upon reaching level 25. Again, I suggest you act quickly, because for limited time only, you can get your hands on a free legendary champion, Chronicler Adeline, just by logging in for 7 days between April 11th and July 8th. What I love the most about this champion, she's amazing at placing valuable debuffs while bypassing the block debuffs of opponents. You see, Raid is launching a 6-week-long celebration of its great community of players, where new activities and rewards will be constantly available. Use code SPRINGHUNT24 to get 10 XP brew, 100 energy, and 100,000 silver. And once you're in, come find me under the name Anime Aniki. Join my clan, and let's become legends together. So don't wait. Download Raid Shadow Legends today. But back to our video. You see, Avatar Sito was a mighty lava bender capable of controlling 4 volcanoes at once. Besides the great bending powers associated with the avatar in general, Sito also possessed great administrative skills. In addition, he was regarded as a highly talented public speaker, a skill which helped him at becoming a flexible diplomat. Beyond these publicly displayed abilities, Sito was also a master of deception. Sito was born into an era of great strife in the Fire Nation. Plagues and natural disasters destroyed the people's livelihoods, while violent conflicts between the nation's noble clans threatened to tear the nation apart. To rescue his homeland, Sito opted for an extremely unusual approach. Instead of taking control himself or forcefully trying to enforce his decisions, as was his right as Avatar, he became a junior minister in the Fire Nation's government. He rejected any privileges and began to work as a regular official, advancing in the ranks according to his achievements instead of any birthrights. He accepted orders from Fire Lord Yoshi and began to improve his country by using its bureaucracy. Now, this was just the beginning, and believe me, we have some very interesting info you probably never knew about past, present, and even future avatars like Genji. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's keep going. So, as we explained, Avatar Sito is not what you would expect from an avatar, right? So then, let's explain a classical example of an avatar next. Roku. Roku was the Fire Nation-born avatar immediately succeeding Avatar Kyoshi and preceding Avatar Aang. Roku's memory served as a guiding force for Aang throughout his quest to end the 100-Year War. He was a wise and merciful avatar with good intentions, living in a period of change, technological revolution, and nationalist expansion, who worked tirelessly to maintain peace between the 4 nations. However, he himself acknowledged that he was too indecisive during his lifetime. Roku's long friendship with Fire Lord Sozin resulted in his reluctance to end his friend's life, when Sozin showed his intentions of expanding the Fire Nation Empire by conquering other nations. This ultimately led to Roku's death, preventing him from stopping a war which would last 100 years, something which weighed heavily on him in his afterlife. Aang inherited Roku's burden of healing the war-torn world, and Roku firmly believed Aang was destined to amend his mistakes. As far as his avatar journey to master all 4 elements, we know the following. After training for several years, Roku mastered the art of airbending, while in the process becoming friends with Aang's mentor, Monk Yatso. Yeah, I guess in the world of Avatar, friendships do last more than a lifetime. After mastering airbending, he traveled to the Northern Water Tribe to learn waterbending from Takukok. At first, Takukok refused to train the Avatar, believing that any Fire Nation subject would hold a higher loyalty to the Fire Lord than the people of the Four Nations, as he had been betrayed by his best friend spying for the Fire Nation as a young man. However, Roku refused to seek another instructor, and eventually convinced Takukok of his devotion by living in the north for several years. When he started to train to learn waterbending, the task was particularly difficult for Roku, as water is the natural opposite of fire. However, years of training enabled him to duel his master and stand his ground, eventually unleashing an attack that would crash and send his teacher flying into the pinnacle of the chief's palace. Moving on, Roku traveled to the Earth Kingdom to learn earthbending from a master named Sud, with whom he developed a great friendship. During one of their training sessions, they raced each other atop slabs of earth to the top of a hill. Although Sud was in the lead most of the time, Roku managed to best him to the top with time to spare to prepare tea for both of them, much to Sud's surprise. For Roku, traveling the nations had not just become about learning the elements, but also about understanding the world and his duties as the Avatar. At some point in his life, Roku found a dragon egg, from which hatched Fang, and adopted him as his animal guide and constant companion during his life as the Avatar. During his later years, Roku's home island was consumed in a violent volcanic eruption, so massive that even Fire Lord Sozin could see and feel it from his palace 100 miles away. Initially, he managed to give time for the other inhabitants, including his wife, to escape the island by forming an air sphere around him. Through the use of his bending abilities, Roku attempted to contain the volcanic destruction, although it was deemed impossible due to the continuous spitting of lava from multiple volcanoes present in the island. He eventually lost hope, but at that moment, Sozin arrived on his dragon and offered his assistance to the Avatar. The two used their bending to try to contain the lava flow, with Roku even saving Sozin from a nasty fall using earthbending. But the poisonous gases eventually forced them to flee the mountainside. On their way down, Roku warned Sozin to not breathe the gas and used his airbending to protect them, before inevitably falling on a gas eruption himself. His vision blurring, Roku pleaded for help. Instead, Sozin realized that without Roku in his way, his plans for conquest would come into fruition, therefore leaving on his dragon and leaving Roku to die. Roku is now dead, and the Avatar cycle is about to begin anew. But before we move on to the next Avatar, let's explain just how Roku actually advised Aang to kill his own great-grandson, Zuko. You see, in the comics, Fire Lord Zuko was puzzled about how to deal with the Fire Nation colonies after the end of the war. Zuko believes that he still needs to protect his people that were born and lived their entire lives in the colonies, while Aang believes that the colonies need to be abolished and that the Earth Kingdom territories should be returned to the Earth Kingdom. Long story short, Roku advises Aang to kill Zuko because he thinks that his approach would threaten a new war once more. Thankfully, with the help of Aang, this tension faded away in time, without Aang having to kill Zuko. This actually resulted in the creation of Republic City, a region that literally falls within the Fire Nation colonies. So, let's move to airborne avatars next. And the avatar that came after Roku's death, Aang. You see, Aang was an air nomad born during the 100-Year War, succeeding Avatar Roku and preceding Avatar Korra. He was also one of a select few avatars, and one of the first in many cycles to learn the ancient art of energy bending, as well as the first avatar known to have actively used the technique. Shortly before the beginning of the 100-Year War, Aang was frozen in an iceberg for 100 years. He later emerged, still biologically 12 years old, into a world engulfed by war. During his absence, the Fire Nation had waged war upon the other nations and managed to completely wipe out the pacifist air nomads in their efforts to kill Aang, and thus eliminate the threat of the Avatar, disrupting their plans for territorial expansion. Thus, since waking up from his 100-year slumber, it fell to Aang to end the war by mastering the other three elements and defeating Fire Lord Ozai. Aang remained a kind and goofy kid at heart throughout his year-long struggle, despite the overwhelming odds of his people and the heavy burdens he was forced to bear. As an air nomad, Aang traveled extensively around the world. During his childhood, Aang was housed, raised, and educated at the Southern Air Temple under the guardianship of Monk Gyatso, who served as his father figure, counselor, and tutor. Aang was always able to excel at any new bending moves he learned. At the age of 6, he was a better airbender than children twice his age, and by the age of 10, Aang had proven himself to be better than his own teachers. He earned his airbending tattoos and the status of an airbending master by the age of 12 for exhibiting prodigious talent with his native element, and with his invention of the air scooter, making him the youngest airbending master in air nomad history. In his childhood, Aang also visited the other air temples, as evidenced by his obvious familiarity with the Western Air Temple, as well as cities in the Earth Kingdom, such as Omashu, where he developed a lasting friendship with the good-natured but eccentric Bumi. He bonded closely with children in the Fire Nation, like Kuzan. Due to the signs of a possible war approaching, Aang was told about his status as the Avatar at the age of 12, 4 years earlier than the traditional age of 16. Aang felt burdened by his status, as the other children refused to play with him anymore, and he came to spend more time practicing airbending with the monks. Monk Gyatso was the only one who showed an understanding of Aang's burden, and thus tried to help ease Aang through the transition from childhood to adulthood by providing Aang with balance through fun and hard work. However, Aang later discovered that he would be sent to the Eastern Air Temple in order to complete his airbending training far away from Monk Gyatso, whom the other monks thought was too soft on him. Afraid and confused, the young airbender ran away with his flying bison Appa, though they got caught in a storm shortly after, which caused them to crash into the water. Aang saved himself and Appa from drowning by semi-consciously entering the Avatar state and freezing them both in a sphere of ice through a combination of airbending and waterbending. The Avatar state kept him alive, although not fully conscious, in the iceberg for about 100 years, while the war raged on. 100 years later, Aang was found and freed from the iceberg by Katara and Sokka of the Southern Water Tribe. Now, their epic journey begins. Aang's first destination was supposed to be the Northern Water Tribe, where he was going to master waterbending. In his journey, however, he stumbled upon Zhong, a firebending master that, despite rejecting his wish to teach Aang firebending, he later changed his mind due to Roku's intervention. Well, that proved to not be the best decision, as Aang went on to burn Katara. Thankfully, due to her waterbending abilities, Katara discovered her proficiency in healing. Throughout the journey, Aang found out all kinds of things about spirits, his Avatar state, and even how Fire Lord Ozai was going to use Sozin's comet to end the war if Aang did not stop him. Aang has to master all 4 elements, and he has to do it before summer. Aang mastered waterbending with the help of Master Pakku, and even single-handedly deflected an entire Fire Nation invasion to the North Pole with the help of the Ocean Spirit. His next destination was the Earth Kingdom, where Aang met Toph, also known as the Blind Bandit. Earthbending proved to be the most challenging element for Aang, as it went directly opposed to both his airbending element as well as his way of fighting, as it required from Aang to face the challenges head-on like a rock. However, after mastering earthbending, this was actually the element Aang used by far the most after airbending. Finally, with the help of Zuko, that now became good, he mastered firebending as well. Before his fight with Ozai, a lion turtle taught Aang how to energy bend, and thus Aang managed to defeat Ozai without killing him, but rather simply taking his bending away, and thus ending the 100-year war. In later stages of his life, Aang managed to help the world heal by handling the very complicated matters of the Fire Nation colonies and the aftermath of the war. Not only that, but tension between benders and non-benders rose as a result of what seemed to be the early stages of an industrial revolution in the Avatar universe. However, having covered Aang, let's see what the life of the previous airborne Avatar, aka Yang Chen, looked like. You see, Yang Chen was the air nomad Avatar succeeding Avatar Sito and preceding Avatar Kuruk. She grew up in a rather isolationist time for the 4 nations, in the aftermath of the Platinum Affair. After mastering all of the elements in her youth, she was eager to make a difference in the world despite her inexperience. Following her confrontation with General Old Iron, Yang Chen resolved to adapt to the complex political strategy of the 4 nations, using manipulation and deceit to her advantage in an era where loyalty was bought rather than earned. Working behind the scenes to put an end to the obscene amount of corruption, she worked with her new companion, Kavik, to investigate the Unanimity Project, which sought to put power in the hands of the Shangs. After defeating 3 combustion benders that acted as human weapons, Yang Chen covered up the crisis as an incident related to spiritual imbalance and successfully petitioned Earth King Feishan to be granted the administration. She eventually became a respected figure and was hailed for her wisdom, determination, and power. Although air nomad culture emphasized pacifism and the sanctity of life, Yang Chen was feared for her fierce willingness to do whatever was required to maintain balance and peace throughout the world in her duty as the Avatar. Due to her devotion, no threats of war occurred for an entire generation after her death. In death, she was revered as a holy individual, and people in the Earth Kingdom even began to pray for her for protection. However, her actions also contributed to a rise in dark spirit attacks during the time of her successor, Kuruk. As again, Yang Chen heavily favored humans, and in no way was bringing balance between human and spirit worlds. She neglected her duties as a spiritual leader, and many times even oppressed spirits in favor of humans, which, as we explained, caused many dark spirits to emerge. Having covered fire and air, let's move on to waterborne avatars. The first we'll analyze is Avatar Korra. You see, Korra was the successor of Avatar Aang. She was the polar opposite of Aang in every way, shape, and form. She excelled in the physical side of bending, while she lacked in the spiritual part. She could bend earth, water, and fire from an age not long after she first walked. That's an insane feat, to be honest. While Aang was constantly trying to resolve issues as peacefully as possible, Korra did not hesitate to threaten her opponents, saying that she will literally kill them. And yeah, she actually meant it. Born and raised in the Southern Water Tribe, where she mastered waterbending, earthbending, and firebending, she later relocated to Republic City to attain a similar proficiency with airbending under the guidance of Tenzin, as well as to help her overcome her difficulties regarding the spiritual aspects of bending. In addition to bending, Korra also has considerable physical prowess. Her impressive raw strength allows her to easily lift Tenzin and his children at the same time, or a grown man with one arm. Likewise, she can easily leap across long distances and over high obstacles from a stationary position, as well as effectively traverse various terrains and vertical surfaces with great speed to hoist herself easily up and off rooftops. She can easily throw a much larger and heavier opponent against a set of pipes with enough force to break them, and can shatter large chunks of ice launched at her with a single punch each. With the assistance of Aang's spirit, Korra gained the ability to energy bend, and after connecting with her past lives, she gained the capacity to enter the Avatar state at will, marking her transition into a fully realized Avatar. However, due to her temporary separation from Rava during the Harmonic Convergence, she no longer has a connection to her past lives. So yeah, I guess our next Avatar will only be able to connect to Korra. Following her battle with Zahir and the Red Lotus, she spent 3 years recovering from trauma. Later, after defeating Kuvira and bringing in an end to the Earth Empire. Korra had finally brought peace in her generation. She struggled to bring balance between benders and non-benders. She fought and won against Unalaq. She restored the Air Nation, and she even stopped an all-out war with the aggressors being the Earth Kingdom this time. Notably, she was also the first Avatar with the ability to metal bend. And yeah, she's also the only known Avatar to have literally dated every member of her squad. But what if I told you that Korra was actually not the only Avatar of her generation? You see, in her lifetime, we also had a dark Avatar as well, Unalaq. Just like the first Avatar fused with Rava, Unalaq fused with Vatu in order to create the Dark Avatar and fight Korra during harmonic convergence. Unalaq was a waterbending master, the chief of the northern and southern water tribes, a former member of the Red Lotus, and the first and only Dark Avatar. He was the younger brother of Tonraq, husband of Melina, with whom he fathered Desna and Eska, and uncle of Avatar Korra. A particularly spiritual man, he briefly served as Korra's spiritual mentor until her discovery of his involvement in her father's banishment, at which point he was absolved as her teacher. Unbeknownst to anyone, Unalaq was working to release Vatu from incarceration in the spirit world, and succeeded in this task before fusing with Vatu to become the Dark Avatar. To this end, Unalaq nearly destroyed Republic City before being defeated and killed by his niece. Even though his attempt to destroy the Avatar and usher the world into an era of darkness, he was eventually utterly defeated. Not only that, Unalaq succeeded in reuniting humans and spirits, and thus changing the world forever. Next, we have the final waterborne Avatar of today's video, Kuruk. Kuruk was the Water Tribe Avatar immediately succeeding Avatar Yang Chen and preceding Avatar Kyoshi. Native to the Northern Water Tribe, he was a powerful and gifted bender who dreamed of changing the mortal world for the better by uniting the people and acting upon the foundations laid by Yang Chen. His hopes were dashed, however, after a brutal confrontation with a dark spirit, which resulted in a deep spiritual corruption that began to fester within him. This clash was only the first of its kind, as an increasing number of dark spirits began to cross into the mortal realm to wreak destruction. To prevent others from being affected with the same sickness that tormented him, Kuruk opted to repeatedly face the wrathful beings on his own. Only his spiritual mentor, Nyahitha, knew about the sacrifices and loneliness he endured. As he secretly destroyed dark spirits in the mortal and spirit world, Kuruk began to neglect his regular duties as the Avatar. Physically and psychologically weakened, he spent much of his free time pursuing a hedonistic lifestyle to cope with his stress and spiritual affliction. He eventually ended the worst dark spirit incursion by weakening an especially evil and powerful spirit, Father Glowworm, in a titanic battle. Having incurred the wrath of the spirits for his actions, as well as lifestyle, Kuruk was finally punished once more, losing his fiancée, Umi, to Ko, the Face Stealer. He spent his last years trying to save her, but eventually failed. Kuruk died at just the age of 33, as his spiritual sickness had drained his life force. Since he had done little to solve the mortal world's problems, great upheavals and strife occurred in the four nations upon his death. We covered 3 of the 4 elements so far, and next we have Earth, and the Avatar I know most of you are dying to find more info on, Genji. You see, the next Avatar after Korra is heavily rumored to be named Genji, but unfortunately, hear me out, I might have to break this to you, but Genji is most probably a fan-created name only, and the next Avatar incarnation will almost surely be named something else. You see, the Legend of Genji is nothing more than a fan-made webcomic series following the events of the Legend of Korra and Avatar The Last Airbender. Whether the producers of the canon work actually decide to name the next Avatar Genji or not remains to be seen. However, I wouldn't count too much on it. However, what we can safely assume is the following. Given the theme and technological advancements of the periods that Aang and Korra lived in, we can expect the next Avatar in line to be living in a technological setting similar to our time, or even more technologically advanced. You see, Aang lived in an era before the Industrial Revolution. Korra lived during the Industrial Revolution, so the Avatar after that, we can expect them to have smartphones, gaming consoles, laptops, and generally the technology we now enjoy, if not something even more advanced. When it comes to his Avatar powers, oh well, I guess tough luck, right? He can only connect with Korra since the connection with the previous Avatars had been severed during Korra's fight with Unalaq. Even though it's not confirmed, I do believe that one of the main struggles of this next Avatar is to find a way to restore the connection of both him and future Avatars with all of the past lives that came before Korra. Moving on, we have another Earthborn Avatar, Kyoshi. You see, Kyoshi was the Earth Kingdom-born Avatar immediately succeeding Avatar Kuruk of the Northern Water Tribe and preceding Avatar Roku of the Fire Nation. She died at the age of 230, making her the oldest confirmed human. She was also an exceptionally tall woman, towering over most people. So again, Kyoshi was a very special occasion of an Avatar. Kyoshi was born to 2 criminals, Jessa, a renegade air nomad nun, and Hark, a thief from a poor family of Earth Kingdom actors. She inherited her later signature outfit from her parents, adopting her mother's golden headdress and metal war fans and her father's face paint. Kyoshi had a difficult early life. Abandoned by her parents, she barely survived as a homeless orphan until being rescued by Kelsang, who became her surrogate father. She was also not recognized as Avatar until she was 16. Instead, her friend Yun was declared the Avatar. When the truth about her identity was revealed, Kyoshi's world was thrown into chaos. Yun was sacrificed to a monstrous spirit, and Kelsang was murdered as he attempted to defend Airbender from Jianshu, Yoon's former master and the Earth Kingdom's de facto ruler. Fearful and desperate for revenge against Jianshu, Kyoshi fled with her other friend, Rengi, and joined her parents' old criminal gang, the Flying Opera Company. With these unlikely allies, Kyoshi consequently traveled the Earth Kingdom and became involved in the criminal underworld while being chased by Jianshu. After managing to kill Jianshu, Kyoshi struggled to find popular acceptance as Avatar and keep the Earth Kingdom stable. As Jianshu's death resulted in tensions and a leadership vacuum, Kyoshi saw the end of a war in the Fire Nation and later dealt with her friend Yoon, who had been corrupted by his desire for vengeance against everyone who had lied about his avatarhood. These experiences greatly shaped her worldview and approach to her role as Avatar. Unlike her successors Roku and Aang, Kyoshi was determined that only true justice could bring peace and had fewer hesitations about killing enemies to achieve this goal if necessary. Employing these methods, she was a generally effective Avatar. She prevented the resurgence of the disastrous Yellowneck Uprising, stopped Fire Lord Zoryu from massacring the disgraced Sawan clan, defeated an attempted armed takeover of the Earth Kingdom by Chin the Conqueror, founded Kyoshi Island and the Kyoshi warriors to keep her adopted homeland safe, and helped to reform the Earth Kingdom into a constitutional monarchy. In her later life, she maintained peace between the 55 states of the Earth Kingdom and helped implement policies to uplift the poorest and most disadvantaged, and saw the Earth Sages redeemed from a corrupt group of politicians to an order of wise advisors and academics. Living for more than 2 centuries, Kyoshi led the world into an unprecedented time of peace. However, some of her actions also caused long-term problems for the Earth Kingdom. The deaths of Jianshu, as well as Qin, and her foundation of the Dai Li would lead to the decline and eventual fall of her home country in the centuries following her lifetime. After her death, the Dai Li obeyed Earth King Jialun's orders to purge the sages who attempted to maintain Kyoshi's policies of peace and prosperity. Because of this, Kyoshi came to deeply regret the creation of the Dai Li, and yet, Kyoshi was not the only avatar of her generation. Now, how can that happen? Well, we now have to speak about Yoon, the false avatar. Yoon was actually a friend of Kyoshi. Talented, charismatic, and handsome, he was misidentified as the new Earth avatar after a long and difficult search. He could literally bend Earth to a point that it would turn liquid, giving the impression of waterbending. Following the revelation of Kyoshi's identity as the true avatar, Yoon was betrayed by his master. Broken and enraged by the fact that he was not the true avatar, Yoon started a vengeful quest to kill all the bending masters who had lied to him about his avatarhood. Determined to put an end to Yoon's destruction, Kyoshi confronted him with her companions in a great battle that destroyed the Avatar Mansion and injured many of Kyoshi's friends. Kyoshi literally needed help from several bending masters to fight and defeat Yoon. Yeah, that's how overpowered this guy really was. Although Kyoshi managed to kill Yoon, she was heartbroken that Yoon had been corrupted by vengeance. And now, let's move to the special category. The first avatar we will analyze is Avatar Salai. But why do we place this avatar in a special category? Well, because in reality, we don't even know in what nation he was born in. All we know is that he came sometime before Avatar Sito, and that he was one of the greatest and most powerful avatars to have ever lived. And finally, the most unique case of Avatar, Avatar Wan, the progenitor. Wan was the first avatar, having lived 10,000 years prior to Avatar Korra's time. Before we proceed, a reminder that this video was brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. Support the channel and have fun playing the game. Download Raid Shadow Legends today. But back to our video. After being banished from his home, he learned to coexist with the spirits and decided to help bring balance between them and the rest of mankind. A quest that eventually led him to becoming the first avatar after he basically convinced several lion turtles to grant him the 4 different types of bending. 2 years after his banishment, during his journey, he encountered a bunch of fleeing spirits who told him they were running away from a raging fight between all-powerful spirits. Concerned about the severe damage the battle could inflict on the valley, Wan went to investigate. He found 2 raging spirits and, oblivious to their identity, ordered them to stop. The white spirit Rava told him off, saying that the fight did not concern him. He objected, telling her it was his concern when the lives of spirits and animals were at stake. After that, the dark spirit Vatu begged him for help and said he had been tortured by his counterpart for 10,000 years. Wan then used his firebending to break Rava's hold on Vatu. In doing so, however, Vatu was free to spread chaos across the world. It was only when Rava explained who she was and that her purpose was to keep Vatu in check that Wan realized his error. They both went after Vatu, and after a prolonged fight, Rava and Wan fused in order to defeat Vatu. The characteristic glow in the Avatar's eyes when using the Avatar state originally comes from none other than Rava. After Wan died, he got reincarnated into the next Avatar in line. This succession came to be known as the Avatar Cycle. Click on this video, where we explain all 12 special bending abilities in Avatar. Go on, click it!